Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Barriers and Boundaries Resilience Leadership Podcast. I am your host, EB, with your personal and or organizational resilience techniques. Today, I'm going to be discussing an intriguing topic, how password security and multi-factor authentication mirror our personal resilience and growth. So let's unlock this topic and take a look. Now, we all know the importance of a strong password. It's like the first line of defense in our digital world for our emails or websites that we have accounts with. But have you ever thought about how this relates to personal resilience? Think about it. Your password, a combination of letters, numbers, special characters, symbols, is your personal shield against digital threats, much like resilience is our shield against life's threats, adversity, challenges. Resilience in psychology refers to our ability to bounce back from adversity, and as we always say, learn from it. It's built over time through experiences and challenges, typically the tough times in life. Now, in each of those moments is when our resilience settings are updated, much like how we update and strengthen our passwords as we learn more about security. Let's say you go through a job loss, obviously a tough challenge. If you learn from it, it'll make you more resilient. You start to identify ways, boundaries to protect yourself, like learning more crucial skills, identifying soft skills that will make you more hireable, things like that. Now let's consider ourselves cyber psychologists for the day. When we create a password, we're setting a boundary. This boundary is akin to the emotional and mental boundaries we set for ourselves in life. As we grow and learn, our understanding of these boundaries evolves, leading us to reinforce them, be it through stronger passwords or firmer personal limits. The challenge is when we make passwords more difficult than they need to be. Let's say a password setting is 12 characters. You got your 2 uppercase, 2 lowercase, 2 numbers, 2 special characters. Are you one of those who will have a 30-character password? You don't have to. You can be a little overboard with personal boundaries as well. I think in social sciences, some of the shifts that we have gone through when it comes to boundaries, we've gone from a very disciplined, very strict, nothing gets in, nothing distracts us. And then we had this bit of there are no distractions. Everything is meant to teach us something. So just follow the rabbit trails. Now, I believe the pendulum is coming back around, finding a more balanced approach where we're not letting the distractions consume us and take us down these rabbit trails that we don't need to go on. Ultimately, I believe this is all very contextual elements to your boundaries, meaning are these distractions teaching you something about your boundaries, or are they true distractions? This is why I love the idea of also having MFA, multi-factor authentication, as part of this discussion. These are often seen when we log in somewhere and then the app or website says it's requesting a code that was sent to our text or email. I see it as the next step in maturing our digital defenses, much like how we mature our personal resilience. This involves multiple verification methods. It's not just about something you know, like a password, but also something you have, like your phone or a fingerprint. This type of layered security is similar to how we develop layers of resilience. We don't just rely on our strength, but also on our support systems, our coping strategies, our personal growth techniques that we have. Hopefully you've been listening to this podcast and developed some of those. Resilience and resilience boundaries are not only based on what you know, but also what you have for support. So let's take a deeper look at this concept of authenticating ourselves. Authenticating, in its essence, is about proving who you are, your true self, your authentic self, as true as we can know ourselves, I guess, right? So there's a lot of philosophy behind that. Boundaries are not just about entering a password for security's sake, but about demonstrating your identity through various means, whether it's a fingerprint, facial recognition, or unique code sent to your device. It relates to how we connect with friends, how we develop trust or intimacy with a partner. How do we learn from adversity? How is it shaping you? This is that multi-factored, this is that multi-layered approach that ensures the person accessing the account is genuinely you. Just as we use different methods to authenticate ourselves digitally, in life, we authenticate our true selves through our actions, our values, our choices, and our authenticity is the unique combination of our experiences, our beliefs, the actions that we take. It's how we show up in the world. It's how we are consistent with being our true self and engaging and finding more ways to engage with that true self, which in turn reinforces our resilience. When we are authentic, we are more resilient to the challenges that life throws at us because we are grounded in our true identity, much like how multi-factor authentication grounds our digital security in multiple evidence of our identity. One thing I hear in counseling all the time is people not just lying to me, but lying to themselves. This is where authenticity comes up in counseling quite a bit, actually. They're trying so hard to have a representation of themselves, but they are not that person, which I think is a profound connection. Honestly, why did you come to counseling if you're not even going to be honest with me? But there's certain trust that has to be built between the counselor and counselee. I get that. But once that is kind of established, it adds to this layer, this continuous process of updating and adapting. In digital security, we regularly update our authentication methods to stay ahead of potential threats. We might add a new device for verification or update our biometric data. This is where I insert a request that the person consider changing their password because it's their insecurity. What do I mean by a person changing their password? It means they change how they think they are protecting themselves when they actually are not. This means updating your coping strategy, the software in your brain that you're using to cope with different threats. How you handle life challenges may need to change. This could also mean a shift in your perspectives, such as moving on from a victim mentality to one of empowerment of how you respond. Other ways to change your password could be learning from your experiences, reflecting on them and what went right or wrong. Another one, and this is a big one, increasing self-awareness. Identify your emotional responses, those mental and emotional triggers. This is about developing emotional intelligence. All of those are ways that you can kind of change your password, which means change the security that you have on the boundaries that you have for yourself. This mirrors how in life we must continuously evolve, adapt our sense of self. As we go through different experiences, we learn and grow, and that is what kind of authenticates ourselves to evolve. This evolution is key to maintaining and strengthening our resilience over time. Reinforcing our boundaries is that equivalent to MFA. We're not static beings. We are very dynamic. Just like our digital security isn't static, it's an ongoing process that is going to shift and flex to one's current situation. I also like this idea of having to change our passwords every so often. I think it's beneficial to consider changing some of the mental and emotional boundaries that we have in place. It requires us to be proactive. It requires us to be aware, adaptable, whether we're updating our digital identities or embracing our evolving authentic selves to strengthen our resilience. The core principle remains the same here. Continuous growth and adaptation are essential for robust protection and personal development. That is resilience. So as we adopt, maybe this MFA in our digital lives, it's like we're recognizing the need for a more holistic approach to security. No longer does just a simple password work for us anymore. We need these MFAs in our lives to double down on the security, just like we need additional multi-factored layered support for our mental and emotional well-being. In life, relying on just one aspect of resilience is rarely enough. I'll honestly just say it's never enough. We lean on friends, families, personal experiences, internal strengths. All of these are multi-factored layers, that digital equivalent, and recognizing that one line of defense, like a single password, isn't enough. It's all about the layers, the integration of those layers, and how we live our lives, our routines, our habits, and ensuring that they're not just routines and habits like a check in the box. This is how you reflect on how you're growing and fortifying yourself in the world. So there you have it. Parallels between digital authentication and personal authenticity. It offers a fascinating perspective. I just wanted to throw this out there. I'm all about how can we use boundaries to protect ourselves and project ourselves in the real world the right way. So what are some questions that I could ask you to maybe get you to think more about this topic in terms of your own lives? What are some of the passwords that you have in your life? Meaning, what are some of the ways that you protect your mental and emotional well-being? What are some multi-factored authentications of who you are? Is it having that friend that you can just talk to, a journal that you can write in, that you can kind of see things on paper? Do you have a therapist? Those are the things of the passwords and the multi-factored authentications I want you to kind of consider, just because if you don't have those things, then you leave yourself susceptible to threats and really an inability to cope with challenges and adversity as it comes up, which I would say you could probably do on a one-off challenge. It shouldn't be a problem. But if it's a consistent challenge, one thing after another, it will slowly creep up on you. One of the things I love about the book, The Noonday Demon, that is about depression. It's a great book. I highly recommend it. But one of the things that it talks about, it relates like a bicycle that you have, that you leave out in the elements, you leave out in the rain. It doesn't rust completely overnight. It is a slow, gradual building up of the rust over time to eventually where it becomes the whole bike is rusted. That's what I want to protect in your mind, in your soul, in your emotions. How do we protect it? How do we keep it secure from actually rusting over so where you can't use it? It's not functional. It'll fall apart. I don't want you to fall apart mentally. I don't want you to fall apart emotionally. Spiritually, I don't want you to fall apart, right? So this is what I'm talking about when I talk about how are you maintaining security? What settings do you have in place? Again, you can go too far with that, have way too many settings where you're not actually engaging in any adversity. You're not growing from anything. You're not going to develop your values by going to Six Flags and riding every ride and come back and be like, oh, I'm totally changed. I'm totally ethical. I'm totally moral now because I rode, the biggest roller coaster there. No, it's how do you respond to losing a job? How do you respond to losing a relationship? How do you respond to moving to a new city, a new country? There's so many different things, subtle things often, that are very challenging to our well-being. And what's interesting to me in that is so many times I see positive things having an adverse reaction in a person's mental well-being. Someone gets promoted at a job and all of a sudden they've never really dealt with having subordinates working under them, or they had a friend that was the same position level and now they're higher than them, and it's created this weird dynamic in the relationship. I've seen this quite a bit, and it's funny that, well, not funny, it was just interesting to me how responsibility as a strength is so easily becoming a weakness for someone when they don't have established boundaries to protect that. It's not just the negative things that we perceive in life, and obviously labeling things positive or negative is part of this. Is that a negative thing? That's something that you could discuss with another friend, with a therapist or a counselor. But just be mindful that it's not only negative things. It's not only positive things either, but adversity comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. And that's why we need boundaries. We need security. We need these settings in our lives that help us identify what's actually happening in our lives so we can filter it, process it, stay secure, stay true to ourselves, and we can keep evolving. So thank you for checking in on today's episode of Authenticating Resilience. Until next time, EB out here.